Hi, everyone. I'm Barnaby, CEO and co-founder here at Prodigy. Hope everyone's having a great day, wherever you're dialing in from, even if it's raining. So my asks up front first would be, we're in the process of opening up pre-seed rounds. So introductions to any amazing, passionate angels who really love to talk about and geek out about the future of work and recruitment. Second, customers. We serve recruiting agencies primarily. So anyone you know who runs or works for a recruiting agency, especially ones that specialize in tech, we'd love to give them a free demo and get some feedback from them on the use of the product. So that would be also fantastic. And third of all, also actually anyone who's hiring engineers and looking for agencies specifically to help them. We obviously talk to a lot of agencies, so we can help them out. So those are my asks up front. And let me just dive right in. So the problem we're solving is this. It takes 1 to 2 weeks on average for a recruiting agency to deliver the right candidates shortlisted to a client, to an employer. It's a complex manual process of manual research, and it's a lot of repetitive tasks. But simply, Prodigy is a tool to help those recruiting agencies deliver the right candidates to clients in minutes rather than days. And in the competitive world of recruiting, obviously speed and accuracy are exactly how you beat your competition. At the core of what we do is exceptional matchmaking. We have a really interesting and complex, on the back end, custom algorithm that leverages both decades of experience as well as NLP techniques and some large language model stuff. It's complicated on the back end, but on the front end, as you're going to see, it's super easy to use. And the agencies that we already work with seem to love using it. So this is my dashboard of the product. This is where I can see that I've imported this many jobs, 21,000, to generate this many matches on these candidates. Now, we get jobs from a variety of sources, and we customize the job feed based on each agency's specific ideal client profile, allowing them to specify any requirements such as black or white listing in different countries based on the markets that they're most interested in. The candidates that I add to the product all appear in one place where I can manage those candidates. I can also see the top scoring match for each candidate. And of course, I can add candidates with a process where currently it's resume upload up to batch amount of 10, and we pass all the information. In the future, of course, we're going to do direct integration to the software that most people in the industry use called applicant tracking systems. And so we're not quite there yet. So it's a manual process. And in the interest of time, I think I'll just skip through the next parts of the product. We also have a job section where agencies can upload their own jobs to then match those against the candidates that they have imported to do a quick sanity check. And I think the interesting thing here is, of course, the matches themselves and what they look like. So if I just pull up, for example, some ones that I've saved, and let's have a look. I guess I can take this one. This is a QA role. Just to give you an idea of what a match looks like. So every time we import a candidate, these matches are generated in the background. And so not only are we generating a match score, we're also generating a whole bunch of match intelligence. As you can see here, a summary of the match and why it's been made, a comparison stacked back to back of different features, as well as individuals. 1 minute. As well as specific match strengths and weaknesses, which agencies love because it gives them talking points to sell the candidate to the client. And then we also have employer intelligence. So this is where we go into detail about who the employer is, who's hiring, and then key contact information for the decision makers, including the recruiting team, which is to allow the agents to then do the following step, which for the time being is they take the matches that they like, they can select them, then they can just export them to their inbox with all the key match details, and then load that into their CRM and use that as the start of their sales process. That's it for now. I don't think I need to go any further. But yeah, thank you very much for your attention. Really appreciate it. Back to my ask just very quickly. Angels interested in HR tech, customers, anyone in the running an agency would love to talk to you, especially if they're in Europe, and anyone who's hiring technical programmers right now, we'd love to talk to you. Thanks for your attention.
Well done, Barnaby. Jolly good show. All right, Pedro, lead off. Honor of the first question to you, Mr. Head Judge.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Barnaby, for the great presentation, the great demo you just made. If you be so kind to stop sharing the screen, it will
yeah.
allow to see the beautiful faces of my colleagues and guests. A question that can be split in two, which is what are the data sources you are using to generate these matches? And if you are, let's say, recycling the information generated that is being stored in your system to upgrade the knowledge about both companies' jobs and candidates.
Okay, do you mind if we just break that down to two questions separately? Sorry, just if
How
you
do
could
you
repeat the
get the
first question.
information? What is information are you using to generate the matches about the candidates? So it's just the curriculum vitae, is something else? That is the one question. And the second one is, if I stay in your platform as a candidate, or everything that happens with me stays within your system and is being used to increase the knowledge about me as a candidate or me as a company.
Okay, so for the time, so let me address that sequentially. So by the time, so in terms of bringing candidates into, sorry, in terms of the information that we use, right now the agencies are bringing the candidates into the product. So they are bringing in their resumes, but they also have other information. And so we have an interim step after they've imported the candidate where they can add additional fields. Eventually, once we integrate into the applicant tracking systems, we'll be able to bring in things like interview notes, as well as just much more information, social media profiles, things like that, different conversations that they've had. The plan in terms of how the matching work is to expand the data sources that we use on both sides, the candidate side and the agency side, and the job side. You can imagine having the company website with values, for example, that can be extracted. But for the time being, we effectively have an extended version of a resume and a job description that we're doing the matches on. But already the feedback's been very good just on that alone. To the second part of your question, the way we work, and I think you were touching a lot of different points there, like GDPR, privacy concerns. We're effectively extending what an agency already does in that they have permission to use their candidates' information when they signed up a candidate to do certain things. We don't share the information of the candidates with any third parties. The only people who can access the candidates' information once it's imported is the tenant itself or the agency itself. So there's a closed loop of information. The match details, we don't send them to the employer. We send them back to the agent at the agency for them to then add to their CRM and sales process. So in fact, it's a closed loop because the information just stays closed within the context of that user or within the context of that agency. So I hope that answers your question, but if I missed any part of it.
All right, fantastic. I guess we should hand over now to Tiana as the product person, see what you think, and then over to Rachel after that.
Great product demo, great indeed. As I mentioned, I've been working for many years, setting up startups out of freelancers and experts on demand. And when I hear you mentioning 2 weeks that traditionally are needed for recruitment or something like that, this is definitely what we don't have if we work the way we work, as some people stay with us for 2 weeks. So definitely we're not going to spend 2 weeks recruiting them. So I think it would be nice to mention in your pitch the use case of expertise on demand, where this efficiency is really very valued. I think that would be really interesting as the future of work, I think, is going that way towards gig economy, freelancers, fractionals, experts on demand. That's just a comment. And I do have one question. Recently, I read a post from a recruitment agency or similar using an HR AI product or similar, where they had really positive feedback on the efficiency of the matching algorithm, that part, but also very negative feedback on the communications part, because the candidates were getting notifications, information, feedback, responses, etc., from the AI, like generic responses after each round, or maybe the final response as well. And this is what they kind of didn't like. They expected the human to call them and give them the good or bad news. So I was just wondering if you had any experience regarding that, or how you plan to approach that part.
So I think, yeah, it's a really good point about us communicating to people where this product adds the most value. We're definitely the opposite end of the market from freelancers, where we are as the senior to executive level, like very specialist roles that require a lot of high touch personal relationships, which we don't productize because that's the relationship between the agent and the candidate. So answering the second part of the point that you were making, because of that, we don't touch the client, we don't touch the candidate. So where we have the positive feedback on the matching, we don't want to touch candidates in the sense that that is for us very unscalable, but it's also, we're infringing on relationships that have been built over decades. So we're never going to get close to being able to provide the value that, a recruiting agent can provide. So yeah, I think hopefully, well, so far we haven't received any negative feedback, but that was the key realization for us early on, was to stay within our lane and be very careful about who we communicate with, and not turn into a spam bot. There's a lot of tools out there that are just spamming out things, whether it's applications, whether it's AI results, whether it's resumes, whether it's and there's a lot of people who are doing that, and we were just very clear about not doing that and keeping that system closed.
Sounds really good. Thanks.
I think you get a prize for saying stay in your lane, Barnaby. I like that. It's a nice phrase. Rachel, what's your brain doing with this one? And then I'm going to come to Asma for a question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm quite interested in the size of the market. So is this something that's kind of more needed in particular locations, or is it a global application? How do you see it moving forward?
Yeah, so there are a lot of questions in there. So the staffing recruiting space is about $650 billion annually, of which you can't get necessarily hard numbers, but estimates range from like 40 to 45% of that market is captured by agencies. And then you have to break it down by different verticals and different specialities. But it's a sizable market. The typical agency kind of generates anywhere from 15 to 25% of commissions. And there's some really interesting demographics that point to why the requirement and need of agencies is going to grow over time. If you think about one-click applications and the move of job boards to maximizing volume of applicants, everyone's incentivized now to just spam the system. So there's just some really interesting trend lines that point towards a greater need. Going to kind of how we're planning on tackling it, we have specific domain expertise in engineering. Obviously, it's a very nice domain to do matching with, because it's rich in hard skills. The other thing that's relevant here is my co-founder and CTO has sold 2 businesses in the staffing and recruiting space, specifically for staffing engineers. So we think we can add a lot of value for solving the problem in that very niche vertical or sub-vertical. And once we've got it working really well, then we can expand to a broader selection, let's say, of sub-verticals within tech, and then beyond there, we can grow out. In terms of geographic markets, yeah, I don't know that I have an answer yet about what the right strategy is and how to go, how to approach it from a geographic perspective. But we've been getting interest, and we're getting use right now from agencies from India to the US, Europe, and Africa. So we've been fairly agnostic in that sense so far. It's more about the size of the company. So we're targeting SMBs because they have fewer automation processes, less capabilities to generate and automate and kind of productize their sales process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was, for example, something which really worked with the agency model in Western Europe, but not necessarily in other places. But it sounds as though it translates really well across.
Yeah, we haven't had any. I wouldn't say we've had any kind of regional kickback. The only one market, interestingly, which seems to be a bit odd, is Germany. Because Germany has such strict GDPR compliance, seems to be stricter than everywhere else in the world. We just get a little bit more hesitation up front. But I would say that's the only place where I've noticed people kind of pushing more friction up front. But we still work with German agencies, and so one of our first agencies was a German one. So I guess it is doable.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to know.
Okay, well, before we call time on this one, I just want to pop over to Asma and see what she thinks about this at the moment. What's your feedback to Barnaby, Asma?
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a brilliant idea. Definitely, we need something to work like that. And the whole beauty of AI and generative AI is kind of make it simple For the businesses before that, we needed to do it manually and use people, how they are feeling about a resume or something like that, just replace it with some sort of a data. But I love to actually know more about data points you are using. So how you are getting a candidate to your platforms, and then what data point are you using? Are you just talking about the CV, analyzing that, or also you are collecting information from other places around them as well?
Yeah, so for the time being, we have probably around 20 data points that we extract or infer from the resume and the job description. So when I say infer, there's a delta between what someone says they want and what they actually need, and there's a delta between what someone says they can do and what they actually can do. And so you can run an inference on filling in that delta on both sides and create some kind of a meta document either side. We use an embedding process that does kind of nearest neighbor matching. And then we also employ hard filtering. So we kind of do this hybrid approach of deterministic and probabilistic matching. Going forwards, what we want to do is start expanding the data set both sides. So we start to incorporate things like social media links, all the notes and all the documentation that agencies have of their candidates, which is quite rich. And then on the job side, you can bring in just a lot of information from whether it's documentation that the company publishes, their ESG policy, their values on their website, things like that. And so you end up with a kind of just multiple documents on either side. The problem here is less about how much information you can get access to. It's more about feature extraction and trying to be parsimonious and not what's the word? Not overfitting the data.
So I'm going to do one of those kind of dealer choice moments where I ask you a question, even though we've totally run out of time. All right.
Yeah,
so
sure.
When I'm hiring, what I'm really interested in is whether or not this person's going to stay. So I find the right fit. I can probably find the right fit in 20 different people, right? But good cultural fit, it's great. But what I'm really trying to judge all the time is, do I get 2 or 3 years out of this person, or is this going to be a shorter term gig? Because that's about then the onboarding costs, any recruitment fees, any training costs, and just integration costs that if it all goes wrong, I've got to do it again. So I'm just wondering if there's anything in what you're thinking about as a product that's really helping to predict almost like the longevity of a candidate in a role, rather than just do they fit on a skills basis.
Yeah. So I think that's the golden question, right? There's some mediating factors here. One is that in tech, and especially with engineers, the median lifespan at a company is less than 3 years. I think it's like 2.5 years, and it's going down. So that kind of mitigates that risk. I think probably not the mission-driven answer, but the kind of practical answer is agencies aren't in the business of making sure that their placements that they make stay for 3 years. And we're not serving employers, we're serving agencies. Agencies are in the business of being efficient and making multiple placements with their recruiters spending as much time building relationships, being on the phone and not doing market research. So in terms of who we're targeting and how we sell, that's not a concern that obviously comes up. But the end buyer, being the employer, if we were selling directly to them, then yes, that would be absolutely a concern. But I don't think I have an answer to that. I think that's the holy grail. And I personally actually don't think you can do it without humans. There is something that you just need a human in the room to evaluate. And that's why I believe that recruiting agencies as a business generally will grow, because we can't get rid of that. And at the end of the day, these are big life choices. Sometimes these are the biggest life choices we make after buying a home, or who we marry is which job we take. And people are loyal to the people who help them find those jobs. And so there's a very human element of this market. What's the way we're going about it, I think, very differently, is instead of disintermediating the industry, which everyone seems to be trying to do, we're building a tool to help the industry be more effective.
Okay, it's interesting, because I think in one way, if you headed into that space, you end up in a more value-based pricing kind of model, as opposed to if you go the other way, you end up in more of a commoditized. But I'm not the marketeer, and I'm sure Nick could give you some feedback on that kind of stuff afterwards. But I asked the question as an employer, but also as a non-exec of a recruitment company, and somebody that sees a lot of these things going around and around in circles a lot of the time. So